the heck are we? I don't even know how to operate this thing. What is going on?
I I don't think it's that you don't know how to operate it. I think it's we've been doing so many streams lately with news in the U.S. It's you know just
Absolutely,
tired of
absolutely.
making the reach.
Yeah, yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We have, well, first of all, let's welcome you to the Sounding Off podcast. My name is Eddie Gonzalez, transmitting to you live from Moscow, Russia. And we have a special guest. Let me see if I get his name right today. Kevin Mikulitsi. How's
Yeah,
that?
you got it.
Finally, this is,
You
yeah,
know,
we finally got his name right.
going
And
going way back. We have common roots. So Gonzalez, Michelizzi, they
yeah, yeah, all that region right in there.
yep.
So, and we have, speaking the truth, where is Daniel? Yeah, good question. Daniel is working. So,
Yes. So
he,
s- at least one of the three of us works for a living.
some of us do. Some of us do have to work. And some of us just play YouTuber as a hobby. And yeah, that's me.
Me too.
Anyway, but some interesting news overnight for those of us here in the east part of the world. And that is President Trump, who just days ago had a brush with death that is still fresh on most people's mind and will live in our memories for quite a long time, has announced his vice presidential candidate to run on the ticket. And this is none other than Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. And I was trying to find the clip in one of our previous lives where I mentioned that he could be a possible. You mentioned him that he was on a list, on a short
Yeah.
list, and I said he might be possible, but I couldn't find it. So um, neither here nor there. But J.D. Vance is an interesting selection for many reasons, and yeah, we can get into that. What are you thinking about, Kevin?
Well, for those who don't know that much about him, I mean, a little background: grew up in a poor family. Uh, went into the Marine Corps. Went to was it Iraq? And
I don't know his service record. I didn't look into it,
yeah,
but I do
and
know he was
then
a Marine.
yeah, um, went back. Apparently, got a law degree, and was a venture capitalist, and then they keep saying 2 years. I think they're trying to give him that extra credibility in the political world, but it's really only been a year and a half that he's been a senator. So very junior. But
Extremely
I don't
junior.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Interesting
an,
pick.
and an interesting fact is that he is a law school classmate of Vivek Ramaswamy. Yeah, I
Interesting.
just I just discovered that this morning myself, and I was like, really? Wow. And Vivek, of course, had some good words to say. And I apologize, I don't have screenshots for this, so you'll have to trust me. But here, I'll show you my phone. It's right there. On X, Vivek made a post. It says, I believe Trump Vance will be the most formidable presidential ticket of my lifetime. So Vivek giving his sign of approval on that.
Yeah, and of course he's got Trump Jr.'s approval and
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of other people in the Republican Party. Um, yeah, real interesting pick. Young guy. So I think part of this pick, yeah, I think there's many reasons behind this pick, but Young is kind of, aiming at the younger voters. I know, I can speak of my daughter who falls into that target range they're trying to attract of, uh, undecided voters. She was anti-Trump in 2016 and 2020, like you wouldn't believe. Not necessarily pro-Biden, but she has taken a turnabout totally, mainly because of the economy in the United States. She says, at the time, this was just a few months ago, she says, I'm a student. I'm working for very little money, but I'm above the poverty level. I can't get assistance. Gas costs a fortune. So I think a guy his age is really appealing to those younger voters. And then, of course, he's very working class guy, being from Ohio, and, that's a pure blue state. But you've got Michigan and Wisconsin, which are, so, and I think you'll appeal to them as well.
Is Ohio blue? I thought they had a Republican governor. They've got a Republican senator. I thought they were red.
Well, red. I'm looking at the blue above your head, so
okay.
I had blue stuck in my mind.
And shout out to my sister if she's watching. She's from Ohio. No, I take that back. She's from Texas, but she lives in Ohio, has been living in Ohio probably for 20 plus years. So I visited the state many times over the past 20 some odd years. I love that area. Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio. I mean, this is heart of America.
Yep.
And the last time that I was in Ohio, I believe was 2021 or 2022. And I remember driving down rural country roads, and you would come into these little towns, we call them villages in Russia, and I would just see Trump plastered everywhere on the side of a barn, 25 foot by 45 foot letters. I mean, just huge. People still flying their, Trump flags. FJB was very prominent. I mean, these people in the state of Ohio, they're very vocal when it comes to their political picks. And so, yeah, Ohio's got a lot to be proud of for their native son to be on the vice presidential ticket.
Yep. Yeah. I've spent some time up there too. Almost went to work up there, and it was amazing. You drive through those rural roads, and then you'll get to, not so much a village / town, but a, very small city, if you could even call it that. And they'd have like one factory there, and everybody worked there. And, then on to the next one, hours apart.
And in Ohio also, there is there's several, but there's one big Air Force base in Dayton, and a lot of research goes on there. And so there was a lot of military contractors in that state. I don't know if that's going to play a part into anything going forward, but I think it's worth to mention, because these contractors will probably be, or probably have been, donors to JD Vance. So just a little.
I think he has a good appeal to the working class, and I think that's the big advantage. That and the fact that he is relatively new. He's kind of a political outsider. And with Trump's, 2016 surprise election being an outsider, he isn't seen as somebody who's embedded in the system. So maybe a little more willing to push on the establishment a bit.
Yeah. Plus, it's time. that a new, younger generation enters this political arena at this level. So, if Trump would have picked another Mike Pence, another 65, 70-year-old white man,
Yeah.
it's like, really, dude, seriously. So very refreshing to see that. Because I think Vance is still in his 30s. I don't think he's past 40, is he?
He's
Maybe he is.
39. He turns 40
39.
next month. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So he'll turn 40 just before the election.
Very, very interesting. And Alex here has an interesting point. Vance is only mild neocon, so there might be hope for him. Yeah, we'll see, because it brings up a very interesting point. Because he could be mild neocon, he could be full blown in the closet, or he may have changed his mind because he was a never Trumper in 2016.
Yep.
And he go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and that's kind of where I'm questioning him. He was a never Trumper, anti-abortion for any reason whatsoever. No, Trump kind of came from there and took a milder stance over time as well. So is it possible that he's, truly reformed his views? I was reading that he decided to take a milder view towards like abortion because polls in Ohio said his stance was unpopular. So, but it also brings up the question of, is he playing to the polls or not? I don't know. Everyone can change. The thing is he is so articulate. He's bright and, making changes to, support positions. It's, not unheard of. It's what we should have, is people willing to do that.
Yeah. Earlier I had asked a question, tell me where you're watching from. And we've got viewers from North America, Southeast Asia, where it's afternoon. And welcome our two Russian viewers, Novosibirsk and St. Pete. Welcome. Yep. Thanks for joining. And I'm looking at some of the comments here, and there's an interesting one right here. In your opinion, how much established... No. Did I pick that? Oh, you picked that. In your opinion, how much establishment does J.D. Vance have in him, and what are the chances of a Pence situation repeating? Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. He's been very vocal about the fact that he would not have certified the election in 2020. Maybe at the time. Now, who knows? It's hard to say. I don't think he is overly steeped in the establishment, just from some of the the laws that he's helped pass over the last year and a half. He's been an advocate for revitalizing manufacturing in the United States. He's kind of a nationalist, bring it back sort of guy. He's talked about
no doubt.
Yeah. He's talked about putting a 10% tariff on all imports, and now it's become, on Chinese imports. It was interesting. I was listening to the Canadian ambassador to the United States who was at the convention. And I did not picture Trudeau having his ambassador at the Republican convention. But she was speaking very highly of him, and they asked her about this, the trade and things like that. And she said, well, Ohio is the largest exporter of goods to Canada in the United States. And he isn't going to want to harm that relationship because it will harm the people that he says he works for. So, I don't know. Have to wait and see.
I was muted. Sorry about that. So,
okay.
in my opinion, about JD Vance and establishment, I really don't know. Uh, he doesn't speak like establishment, or at least not in his time in the Senate.
Yeah.
And he is relatively young, and I mean that as a senator in time, his tenure. So maybe those long, deep tentacles of the establishment haven't really been able to take root. Now, he does come from, as some of y'all have noted in the comments, is he is a globalist, Peter Thiel business partner. So my question back to Speaking the Truth is, we know Peter Thiel may be a globalist. Do we know JD Vance is? Is he bought into it, or is he just trying to make a buck? Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Typical
We'll find
venture
out.
capital. Yeah. Typical venture capitalist isn't necessarily a globalist. They like dealing in the global economy because
You have to, yeah, exactly. So does that make you a globalist if you uh, want to do business with the world? If
Yeah.
we're going to go down that line of thinking, then you would have to throw in Russia as a globalist country, because Russia, along with the BRICS countries, are all over the world, all over the globe. Are they
Yeah.
globalist as well, because they're looking to form partnerships? So I think globalist is one of those words that's been hijacked to mean something negative. It's all in a particular
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. And when you look at the economic policies that he's pushed through as what is he? He's the head of the, which committee is it? The economic committee or something to do with money. But, he's been for limiting the power of mega banks, refusing to let them, he pushed an amendment through to keep them from being able to buy a failing bank unless they were the only one that could do it or was available to do it. A lot of education and economic development. Has a very strong anti-monopoly stance. Can't speak this morning. So, and big on healthcare reform, wanting to, reduce the regulatory burden on healthcare providers to promote competition. Now, some people would say, well, this is what the Democrats are going after as well. It just means that the healthcare providers, the insurance companies, they'll make more money. It won't lower costs. But, who knows? There's two sides of that deal.
Absolutely. I'm reading some of the comments about
our good friend Svetlana.
A national policy of treating the whole world as a proper sphere for political influence. A national policy of treating the whole world as a proper sphere for political influence. Is that the definition of a globalist from the left, or Merriam-Webster?
Svetlana says that's from the Merriam-Webster dictionary.
Interesting. I still think it's been hijacked, though.
I do too.
Something very, very negative.
As many words have. Since I mentioned the Democrats, this is a real interesting thing that I saw. Trump got shot 48 hours earlier, and we've got Biden releasing the statement that he was obviously reading off the teleprompter as he's looking off to the left the whole time, trying to read the teleprompter, saying that, they needed to be a little kinder to each other. They didn't have to be attacking each other. and he was going to start looking at Trump as his I don't remember what he termed it, but basically a running partner or something. And Trump releases his statement saying that he also wanted to tone down the rhetoric on things. Now, it came from Trump. Whether it's true or not, we'll see Thursday. He claims that he had an attacking speech for accepting the nomination on Thursday, and that he's had it rewritten to not attack the Biden campaign. And yet I was looking at news reports today. The Biden campaign, for all their gentleness and kindness that they're going to use, is severely attacking JD Vance. He's going to ruin life for every average American citizen, all the working class. He's anti-women. He's, pro-corporate. He's going to lower taxes on everybody, and it will hurt, the working class. So I see the kindler, gentler Biden campaign only lasted about 24 hours.
No, they definitely went on offense when it came to JD Vance because they're not dumb. Okay, their political campaign may not be very smart, but at the same time, they're not dumb, and they realize that JD Vance can appeal to that independent voter that still undecided, and they fear that. So that's who they're trying to sway by their attacks. And then the other situation with that, it seems like Trump may have had a come to Jesus moment. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the rhetoric has toned down. We saw the same thing, but I think it was only shock speaking from the Biden administration within the first 24 hours, because they were like, sorry, this shouldn't be happening and we shouldn't have any violence in politics. And then 24 hours after that, they doubled down on Trump would be catastrophic for the United States, catastrophic for democracy, and just short of calling him a terrorist. So we're back to that again. So that didn't last.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, if you look at the polls, and we know how good the polls are in the United States, but Trump's popularity actually went up after, that shot was taken at him. I don't know. I had somebody ping me earlier today and said, do you think with the elections, things in the United States will get better? Don't you think that Trump is sure to be elected and the economy will grow and everything will be good? What are your thoughts, Eddie?
State that question again, because I'm a man and I can't do two things at once. And I was reading a comment that I'm going to highlight here so we can talk again.
So somebody asked me, they said, with all that's been going on, Trump's VP pick in Vance is being shot at, his popularity going up. Do you think that, well, I guess it's a two-part question. A, he's guaranteed to be elected. And B, if he's elected over Biden, will everything improve in the United States? Inflation will go down. The economy will go up. Jobs will be better. The banks will be better. Mama's lousy lasagna will be better. And what do you think? So what do you think?
Short answer to both questions, no. So there's no guarantee, regardless of Trump's popularity. Look at his popularity in 2020. Now they're trying to push this too big to steal deal. You never know. Okay. You never know. But is his popularity on the increase? Absolutely. We've seen that across the board. So yes. Second part of the question, do things change overnight? Absolutely not. This requires change in policies. This requires change in regulation. This requires change in some laws. It's not going to change overnight. Now, what can change is the focus and direction that the leadership of our government wants to take the country. Okay, because our country's on a particular trajectory right now. And you put a new president like Trump in there, there's definitely going to be a shift in trajectory, but it's not automatic. It's going to take Congress. It's going to take policies from the Trump administration. And probably the most important part of this is because the way America is set up to operate, it's going to take corporate cooperation with these new initiatives, with these new policies, with regard to energy, with regard to manufacturing at home, with regard to trade, with just across the board, okay? Because private business fuels America. That's what feeds America. You got your people work for private corporations. They don't work for the government, even though the government is rather inflated at the moment. Most people work for a private corporation. So you've got to have those on board as well. Now, so far, the corporatocracy in America has been extremely cozy and I don't want to say in bed with, but might as well, with the left. All of these huge corporations have bought into diversity, equity, and inclusion. They've bought into a lot of these woke agendas. They have bought into demonizing everything, all the talking points of the left. They've just adopted all of the talking points of the left to attack everything, everyone. So talk about having to bring those around. Okay. Can that happen? Will it happen?
Good question.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. I had the same answer you did, is who knows? Do I think things are going to change significantly? No. I hate to say that, but so poll numbers, just so people don't think that we're overinflating things. The day before Trump was shot, he was 2.7 points above Biden. The day he was shot, he went up to 2.9 points above Biden. And yesterday, after picking Vance, he went back down to 2.7. So, this is the reliability of polls. And this is an average of all of the polls. Of course, CNN still lists Biden as being, ahead of Trump. But does it surprise you?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So do you see any downsides to picking Vance?
Too soon to be seen.
Yeah.
Too soon to be seen. Yeah. In fact, why don't we just listen to some of Vance in his own words, and let's see what he has to say. One moment here.
Already tonight. We're going to ask each of you about your views on former President Trump. But Mr. Vance, we do begin with you. You've admitted you've changed your mind on Donald Trump, but in the past you've said, quote, "I'm a never Trump guy," quote, "My God, what an idiot," and quote, "God wants better of us." All statements you have either said or tweeted about Donald Trump at some point. The question, you have 60 seconds. Why should Trump voters, Trump supporters, vote for you?
Yeah, look, all of us say stupid things, and I happen to say stupid things very publicly.
I've been very public about the fact that I voted for the president in 2020, that I was wrong about the president back in 2015, 2016, and that he's been the greatest president of my lifetime for the very simple reason. There are many, but one very important reason is that he revealed the corruption in Washington, D.C. I mean, who would have believed 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that the FBI would actually investigate illegally, get an illegal wiretap on a sitting U.S. presidential candidate? We saw that. Trump revealed it, and he revealed it in a way that showed us the stakes of the fight, which is why I'm running for this office in the first place. One thing I'd point out is that I was just north of 30 years old when I said a lot of those things. A lot's changed in my life. I re-engaged with my faith. I got baptized 3 years ago. I've had 3 kids since then. A lot's different. And one of the things that's different is that I did change my mind about Donald Trump. He was a great president. And I think at the end of the day, one of the things this race presents is an opportunity. Who actually agrees with Trump on the core issues of trade, of immigration? Who's willing to fight for an America First foreign policy? I think that's clearly me. Thank you, Mr. Vance. We're going to move on to Mr. Dole.
Hey, I have to respect that.
Yep.
I have to respect that. I mean, the man said, hey, I've changed my mind. I've grown some. I'm not the same person I was before. And this is who I am now. And as a man myself, I respect that.
Yeah. And, we all change our minds sometime. I had an interesting discussion with my wife this morning based on her seeing Biden calling Vance basically a mini-me for Trump. And, criticizing that his personality was like Trump's. He could be brash like Trump, and that they had the same thoughts about policies. And I just liked what my wife said so much about this, I just had to bring it up. She said, when you pick a mate, a husband and a wife, a woman is going to choose somebody that she's compatible with, meshes with. They have very similar thoughts on things. Now, they're going to disagree on some things, much like Vance and Trump have and will, but they can change and mold and look past some things and work together on different things. So she likened it to, a marriage. They're compatible. They are going to disagree on some things, but they're able to work through them.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I also think that there's another layer, maybe an underlayer to that, and that is this choice in my best political interest as well?
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's got to weigh into it as well, because for all we know, maybe Trump and Tulsi make a better combination as far as like meshing together. Maybe not. I'm just using that as an example. But does it make a wise choice politically? So I think on all levels, that has to be considered as well. And Svetlana has an interesting question. Do you think that Joe Biden is staying in the race, given that chances of Democrat victory are almost zero, and not even Newsom will want the job of being a guaranteed loser? I like the way you framed that.
Yeah. I don't think that Biden staying in the race is a guaranteed loss for the Democrats. Again, you look at the poll numbers, they're pretty consistent. There's Democrats who are going to vote Democratic, and there's Republicans who are going to vote Republican, and it's all about the undecided votes. They have been about 2.7 points off. I'm looking here. Trump overtook Biden back on November of 2023, and he's been leading Biden ever since. So, but we're only talking 45% of the voters to 47%. So, to this day, you're going to have about 45% of the people who vote for Biden no matter what. I think if he drops dead, 45% will still vote for him.
In 2020, many did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't put that past them as well. But yeah, I just think it's an interesting choice. And like I said, the news cycle has been, I mean, in one day in the modern news cycle is like 1 month was in the news cycle 20 years ago. Just things
Yeah.
happen just at the speed of light, and so fast. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Just even in the next 24 hours. So
Yeah. I agree.
but I have. What is this? We'll be voting Biden on Goose's Louis write-in candidate. So I'll, Kevin had mentioned in a previous live that you will not be going to Poland to go vote in this presidential election, and I
Yep.
have requested a mail-in ballot from Texas. So the process was to request the ballot. Of course, it comes to you electronically, so this is PDF. So this is not secret ballot by any means.
And it could go to anybody, right?
And it could go to anybody. But realizing that, I still want to have a say. So I will take my chances, and I will vote by ballot. But then I scan that ballot and email it back. So we'll see.
Yeah, state of Colorado, where I have residency, was more than happy to mail me a ballot. Of course, the mail doesn't work, so so much for that. Speaking the truth, wanted to know if the poll I'm looking at was before or after Trump's assassination attempt. So I'm not looking at one poll, I'm looking at the average of all of the current big pollsters out there. It's about 25 or 30 different pollsters. And as I said, Trump went up 0.2% the day he was shot. He went back down 0.2% yesterday. But the spread between them has pretty much been 45 to 47 since last year. So the numbers don't change that much. It's all the undecided vote. Yeah, I think, the United States should roll out something like Gus Slugi. It would be a great benefit. My option with the state of Colorado was either, go to the embassy and vote, and the embassy told me you have to go to Poland, since I'm officially registered as a resident of Russia, or to figure out a way to get the poll to me.
Yeah, and same thing here.
The ballot.
But Texas had the option of non-secret ballot email. I was like, yeah, I'll take that, because I wasn't going to go to Poland or anywhere else either to vote. But there are a couple of topics that I go ahead.
We'll have to see how many people we can get to do that and send them all to our email addresses.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That'll be interesting. There are two topics that I'd like to cover before we exit here, and one is what does this mean for Ukraine and the conflict going forward should Trump win? And the second point I was going to make, I have completely forgotten. But let's talk about Vance has been a very vocal voice, I guess, against arming of Ukraine by sending either weapons or money from the U.S. And he's got something to say about it. So I'm going to bring this on and let you guys hear it in his own words.
That we're focused on this border in Ukraine. I got to be honest with you. I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
I don't care what happens one way or another to Ukraine. So does he mean it? What do you think, Kevin?
You know, it fits into what Trump says. He'll end it in, end the conflict in 24 hours. Does he mean it? Again, everything about him since he's been elected to the Senate has been about the working class people. And I think he sees that the continued funding is wasted money and it's taken away from the working class people in the United States. So, yeah, I think he means it.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, Vance is brutally honest when it comes to that subject. And I've even read on X, except I didn't save any of these posts, some very pro country posts and accounts saying, we're going to have to go at it alone because we can't depend on the West anymore. It's over. So it's up to us now. And everyone's going, it's every man for himself. And that was some of the rhetoric that I read today with regard to that situation.
Yeah.
So, and I can't remember what the other topic was. Go ahead.
I hope he could be trusted with these words. I think it is absolutely awful, and this is just my opinion, that the amount of money that the United States and NATO and the European Union are spending on the conflict in Ukraine to keep it going is absolutely ludicrous. It's, it does harm the local people. I know a lot of people who live in Germany and they complain about their economy, how hard it is to pay their utility bills, lack of work. And yet their government says, oh, everything's great. Our economy is booming. We don't need Russian gas and oil. They parrot the United States. As long as everybody has some cookies and cream ice cream, they should all be happy.
Mm-hmm. Especially President Biden. I still cannot remember the second point that I wanted to make about J.D. Vance. Dang it. But I don't think it's, I think it's going to be very difficult for this momentum of nonstop funding, period. Whether it be with regard to Ukraine situation, whether it be with regard to just government spending, I think that's going to change. I think there's going to be a big focus and shift to internal matters of the United States, to the economy, to the border, the southern border of Texas and the United States. And I think that's where the focus is going to be, because this is what the American people have been asking for, demanding of their government for years. Not only this administration, going back to the Trump administration, and even beyond that with Obama and everyone else. What about
Trump
us?
Trump has a history of that as well. So if you look at his last term in office, these are the things he focused on.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And it's not the point that I forgot, but it's another point that I'm remembering now. Yeah, that's coming up about J.D. Vance. And somebody had mentioned, of course, he's running on a Republican ticket, but I think he's rhino in a positive way, much like Trump is. And what I mean by that is this is a nationalist populist movement. Make no mistake about that. This is not, these guys say they're Republican, but it does not mean the Mitt Romney version of Republican. This is not the Nikki Haley Republican Party. The RNC that is meeting in Milwaukee is not the Republican Party of Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. So this is, make no mistake, this is MAGA. This is Make America Great Again. This is a nationalist, populist agenda. And this is something new in America. Trump ran as a Republican in 2016. And just as this MAGA movement was kind of just starting to get some traction, and MAGA came actually from the Tea Party movement, a few years before that. But now it is much bigger. It's more cohesive now. And I think there might be a chance to make America greater again.
Greater, yes.
If you follow me, if you're an American, you'll understand exactly what I mean by that. It will make it greater in a positive way. But we may not reach that pinnacle of greatness, but it will be greater. It will be better.
Yeah. And they're actually calling these guys the New Republican Party, right? Or the New Republicans. So.
Yes. So there is a distinction between MAGA nationalists and Republicans, even though they all call themselves Republican.
And I really think that calling themselves Republicans, like Trump's first term, I think it's just a matter of Trump was smart enough to realize if you're not a Democrat or a Republican, you're not getting elected. Look at JFK
Absolutely.
Jr.,
That brings up another good point. Thank you very much for bringing up RFK. He now has Secret Service protection.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes. So maybe within 24 hours of the attempted assassination on Trump, Trump comes out on his platform. I can't remember what it's called because he doesn't tweet on X. But he said, in light of what's happened to me and in light of what's happened with the Kennedy family, the only smart thing to do, the prudent thing to do, the American thing to do is to give Robert F. Kennedy Secret Service protection immediately. And within 24 hours of that, it was granted. How do you like that?
Yeah.
How do you read that? How do you read that? Since RFK is probably not going to win the election.
Reality is it was the right thing to do. Biden doesn't have to give RFK protection. He has to give Trump protection. Correct. Now, the amount he has to give him is debatable. But I'm looking here. It looks like Trump's call for them to give them protection was earlier in the day on the 15th, and then later in the day on the 15th, Biden granted it. Now, are they related? Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. But
interesting. And of course, now let's go. Since some of our listeners love to go down the conspiracy trail, let's go down there. Just
conspiracy trail yesterday.
Let's go down the trail just a little
Small
bit.
Small rabbit hole.
Yeah. So could this mean? I mean, so Trump comes out and says, "Hey, you need to do this. This is the right thing to do. The American thing to do." Even though he will never be president, could there be a reason? Trump has a vested interest in making sure RFK is alive and makes it to the end of the election, and then maybe play a part in the new administration. That's for you conspiracy folks to think
Or
about.
to even think that, maybe they figure RFK is taking votes from Biden, or so let's keep them in there. Who knows? But I think
Who knows?
if Trump's statement and Biden granting the protection are related, and this will feed the conspiracy guys a bit. Well, no, it won't. Could it be that Biden thought he'd look bad if he refused? He's got one presidential candidate saying, you need to be fair and give this guy protection.
Oh, definitely. It's a win for Biden. Very minute win. But if they want to chalk that in the win column, they can. But because it looks good, and like I said, it was the right thing to do. But yeah, they're not going to get much traction out of it.
Yeah. I think this is
So-
going to be a daily dose of what comes next for 2.5 months.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think this might be a good off-ramp for us.
Yeah, I noticed as
Yeah.
usual, we went twice as long as we said we were going to.
Yeah, we did.
It's
We said we would go
our
30
usual.
minutes or
Hey.
so. But I want to take this opportunity to invite everyone to our next live, unless there's breaking news between now and then. That this will be Wednesday at 17:30.
5:30.
Yeah,
Yep.
17:30 Moscow time. And this will be myself and Kevin, and with a special guest of, I guess we could name him Mike Krupa.
Dr. Mike
And,
Krupa from Poland.
Dr.
Yep.
Mike Krupa from Poland. And we are going to be discussing Viktor Orban and his peace initiative. So a lot of interesting players in Viktor Orban's orbit. And this is Xi Jinping, Trump, and of course, Vladimir Putin and President Zelensky as well. So join us tomorrow.
And for those of you in the United States, that's 10:30 p.m. Eastern and 7:30
10:30
Pacific?
a.m. 10:30 a.m.
a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's early, Eddie.
Yeah, it is. How many cups of coffee have you had so far?
I have actually not had any. I'm drinking a cup of tea at the moment because that's what I
Ah.
had up here in my office.
Gotcha. I'm on my second cup of coffee. Folks, thank you for joining us as always. Appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. We appreciate it. I've seen a lot of familiar names in the live stream. So I thank each and every one of you for joining us. And from here, I will say, пока.
Пока-пока.